I usually like to begin with a story or something funny, depending on what we're talking about for the day. Um, but on considering this, I realize that each and every one of you have the story to begin this lecture. We're going to be talking today about three things. We'll be talking about suggestion, we'll be talking about faith and feeling. And what I'd like for you to do is to take a few seconds, and I just want you to, if you have to close your eyes, do so. I want you to think about that time where you just knew Spirit delivered in your life. God came through. A time when you needed that job, that time when you had to catch that flight, that time when you found something or someone who was lost, that time where that what seemed to be supernatural appeared in your life. I just want you to take a moment and think about that situation. Right now, it may be commonplace for you, and you may have maybe even forgotten about it. Maybe you thought to yourself it would have worked out anyway. But you know deep down inside that something in the unseen realm happened in your life to deliver that to you. I want you to think about how you felt right before that blessing was delivered. Think about the fear you had to overcome and how you become steadfast in your faith, how you got that feeling on the inside that it was taken care of, how you saw yourself where you were supposed to be, who you were supposed to be with, doing what you were supposed to do from your own vantage point. I want you to picture that feeling that you had when things worked out finally, what you kept telling yourself along the way, and how it eventually became a part of your life. It manifested. Many of us have been blessed to go through this process, if not all of us, if we truly think about it. There's this verse in the Bible that says, and the word was made flesh and dwelt among us. It's in John 1:14. In this saying, many of our Christian brothers and sisters, they use this to talk about the birth of Jesus Christ. But this is a mechanism of creation itself. Look at this. And the word was made flesh, not will be, not might be. It was made flesh. It did happen. This is revealing how spirit becomes experience and how consciousness becomes conditioned, how the invisible becomes visible. Our lives are a living evidence of faith. That's why I wanted us to take a moment and remember that time where we had to have faith. That time where we had to really dig down deep and push everything to the side, everything within our lives that seemed as though this is the quote unquote reality of how things are. And you just push that right to the side and stuck with the unseen and said that this is how it is, regardless of appearances. Neville Goddard says that man's faith in God is measured by his confidence in himself, for it is only through confidence in ourselves that we develop faith in God. A lack of self-confidence is a lack of faith in God, and that's from the power of awareness. And what this means is that faith is not something that's just abstract or theological. Faith is very practical. Thinking back to that situation, you needed something to happen in your life. It was very practical at that moment, whatever it may have been, very practical. You needed that thing at that time. I like to think of a simple story in my life. I remember I had paid for this trip. I've shared this story before, probably 10 times. I paid for this trip to India. It's for a graduate program, and my passport hadn't come back. It was a lot of bureaucracy going through. They were sending out requests for my birth information to England because I was born in the Bahamas, and India because it used to be an English colony, was assuming that my birth records were in a different country. And so even though I kept telling them, no, when I was born, the Bahamas was already sovereign, you need to go there. No one listened to me, right? They just ignored me and kept asking the Home Office in the UK for my information. And I'm getting really upset because I paid for this flight, I paid for all this stuff. It was non-refundable, and I really wanted to go on this trip, and I was getting a grade for it too. So, and I don't know what happened in the mail. I just got a FedEx, and it had my passport in it and it had the stamp in there, the visa. And there was no explanation. They just said they would not issue it. The last conversation I had, they just weren't going to issue it because they couldn't verify my birth information. And I remember that feeling at that time about how this had to happen and how I saw myself in the pictures that I had been looking at, with the Taj Mahal and all the other cool places we were going to go. And I just got quiet within myself, and I just knew I was going to be there with the rest of my cohort. And this FedEx just arrives with my passport and the stamp in it. And it's a simple thing in my life, but I constantly go back to it. It's my go-to when I think about there is something in front of me that seems as though it's a block to where I want to be, who I want to be, what I want to have. And I think back to this simple story as a reminder of what my Christian brothers and sisters would say, God's favor in my life. We know as religious scientists, members of New Thought, that that is something that comes from without us, that comes from within us, excuse me. So the life that we're living is not a result of chance. It's the outpicturing of our inner states that we faithfully occupy. Not that we pray about once, not that we affirm occasionally, but what we live from. Now, this first formation of our faith, of course, comes from our parents. And before we choose our beliefs, we inherited certain assumptions. Our parents, through their words, their moods, and their expectations, they introduced us to a certain version of reality. They taught us what life feels like, what love feels like, what God feels like. And we did not analyze any of that. We just accepted it. That's faith. I want to have that kind of faith again, the faith of a child, to know that my parent, which we call God, will always deliver for me, will always love me, will always provide the best for me. I want to rock with that faith throughout my entire life and never let that go. Neville Goddard says, the subconscious mind is not selective, it is impersonal, and it accepts whatever you feel to be true. It is the seat of habit. What you habitually feel as true about yourself and your life becomes your experience. That is from Feeling is the Secret. You see, children, as we know, feel first. They assume first. And those assumptions quietly shape adulthood unless they're consciously revised. And many of us are on a path to revising those assumptions in our lives, in our 20s, in our 30s, in our 60s, in our 80s. We're still revising, many of us. And that's a good thing because there's so much, and we should continue to revise, reflect, and redirect our energies until we see the life that spirit wants for us, that we want for ourselves, that we have that total and complete confidence, that faith of a child, that the universe never leaves us alone, never abandons us, and we are always within God's embrace. Now, there's this concept called autosuggestion. That's the old term that was used. I like to just call it suggestion or an inner agreement. Joseph Murphy says that autosuggestion is a way of directing your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind accepts any idea held in the mind, which is repeated, believed, and emotionally charged. That's from The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. If you have not read it, it is a fantastic book. Every one of us is engaged in this process of autosuggestion all day long. Not through affirmations, but through inner agreement. We're all familiar with agreements. We've rented a place before. We had an agreement. You pay this rent, you can live here. We purchased cars, maybe. You pay this month, or you finance them. You pay this money each month until you pay this car off, and you get to drive it. You stop paying it, we're going to come take it, right? That's the agreement. Um, little side note here, a little side story, as I like to do. I always like to try to keep myself from making what I call dumb financial decisions. And the way that I do that, I don't know if this is good or bad, but there are tons of stories out there, particularly on YouTube, where people make some decisions that are not optimal with their finances. And I watch these every now and then to remind me why I don't go out and buy a new truck every 2 years, right? Or why I don't go out and buy a Maserati, right? On paper, it says you can afford it, but is that what you really want to do with your life? Is that what you want to do with your finances? So when we have an agreement, you give A in exchange for B. You buy a car, and many people have these really high car payments these days, $1,000, $1,200, $1,500. If that's what you want, if that's what you can do, that's within your ability, God bless you. Do what you want to do. I'm using this as an example. I'm simply saying that the amount of money that I need to pay every month for this given item, I'm actually taking the time, part of my life, to come up with this amount of money. And I turn around and I give basically a part of my life, because it's time, that translated into money, to a finance company. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I personally don't want to give these huge amounts of my time, my life, for a vehicle. That's just me. What are we giving on a daily basis for the inner agreements that we've made in our lives? We are exchanging our time and our life for ideals that are not ours in many cases, hanging on to a version of ourselves, a vision of our lives that we don't necessarily want, but we continually give of ourselves for that life. That to me is also not a fair exchange. It's one of those things that we're looking to revise. That inner conversation that we have with ourselves is always suggesting three things. This is who I am. It's suggesting to us, this is how life works, and this is what I can expect. The subconscious mind is a faithful servant. It's a faithful servant to the consciousness. It's going to accept these suggestions without argument. So what are the suggestions we would like to give? What do we want to exchange? What is that inner agreement? What do we want to give for the life that we desire? To be who we want, who we say we are. Neville says, assumptions, though false, if persisted in, harden into fact. We have seen that. We've seen people do this in our lives. We've done this in our lives. We look back and we look at character traits that we have now that are good, and you think to yourself, yeah, I did that because I constantly thought that this was me and I had the discipline to do this thing. Or you look at character traits that are not optimal for your life, and you say, yeah, well, hopefully we say, yes, I created that. I'm responsible for that. I was disciplined enough to keep doing this thing that's not good for me on a repeated basis. That's the concept of accountability. That's a whole other subject. Notice what he said. He used the word persisted because we can't convince we don't convince consciousness with effort. We persuade it with consistency. So while we say, this is the life we want with our mouths, what we're doing on a regular basis actually is our affirmation. What is a religion? A religion is something that you truly, deeply believe in and do on a consistent basis. So you can say you're a Christian and do something that is completely unchristlike on a regular basis. You can say that you're Jewish or that you're Muslim or that you're this or that you're that, and maybe don't necessarily adhere to that in every aspect of your life. This is not to call anyone out. It's simply saying that what a religion is what we do on a consistent basis. And many of us, every one of us, just about have our own religions. We have our own rules by which we live our lives. We want to make a conscious effort to create suggestions for ourselves that return us to the state that we wish to express until that feeling becomes so natural that that is us. When I was a kid, 19, 20 years old, I had had my first child already. Actually, my wife had the child. But I was there too. And I wasn't quite set up yet in life. And I looked at all of these folks who were living these regular middle class lives, educated or had some skill, and they were able to take care of their responsibilities and provide for their families. And I said, you know what? That's what I want. At that age, I said, that's what I want. That's the ultimate goal. I want to own a home, and I want to do that. I want that American dream. And I began to see myself that way. And even at a point of no education, no wealth that I came from, I was able to build something without even thinking, without even realizing what I was doing. I was modeling myself after my perceived idea of what success was in order to achieve a certain goal for my children. I repeatedly returned myself to that state over and over and over again until it became natural. So even working as a security guard, as a busboy, which are wonderful jobs, they help to get me through life and get me to where I wanted to be. I saw myself as something else. And I continually saw myself as something else until I became that thing. It wasn't something else, it was me. That leads us into faith. Faith is not wishing, faith is not hoping, faith is not waiting. Faith is acceptance before evidence. You got to accept it. Neville Goddard says that faith is the substance, excuse me, actually, it's the Bible, but he was copying it. It says faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So faith is not about the future. Faith is about now. Our faith, we cannot say to ourselves, this is what I want to be. It's so natural to say that. I want to be this. I want to be this one day. I want to have this one day. I want to be at this place one day. I want to have a certain level of spiritual development one day. We actually have to step into that place now. We have to be that now, even if we don't possess those things in what we call the natural, but within us, we have to possess those things. We have to see ourselves with them. We have to see ourselves living in that state right now. It's one of the things that I personally have always struggled with because it felt like I was lying to myself, living in denial. But in all actuality, what I was doing was setting up my mind, setting up my brain with the necessary fertilizer, if you will, to bring that life into reality. What we must do on a continuous basis, of course, is to strengthen that faith. Ernest Holmes says that faith is not something to be acquired. It is something to be used. We have faith to the degree that we embody it. So faith is strengthened through use. I would couple that with imagination, being able to continually see ourselves as we choose to be. On a continuous basis, consistently praying, always in our mind, this is who I am, and never deviating from it. And when faith grows, faith grows when it's lived, not when it's discussed. So we can continue to say these affirmations all the time, but it's when we start living it, when we start taking those steps in the right direction, when we start moving toward being that which we say we are. You've never bought a home before, but you go on to Zillow, you find what you want, and you say, okay, how do I get this? I've never been through this process before. Maybe I don't necessarily have the money or the credit or whatever the case is, but you see yourself in that home. It's going to be just like that. And then you meet someone all of a sudden who says, hey, I have this program for first-time home buyers, and they walk you through how to buy a house. Okay, now I know how to do it. Oh, well, your credit needs to be a certain way. And you start doing certain things. And over time, those things begin to improve while you're working and you're saving. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, you get a promotion. And that promotion's paying you more money. So now you can actually qualify for what you're looking for. I'm not saying this is what the process is going to be like. I am saying being open to whatever the universe gives to you as a process, being open to it, not dictating it, but allowing it to happen within your lives by having that end goal. And of course, I like to use things as examples, but there are much higher things and loftier things that we can want in life besides houses and cars and jobs. But more importantly, our spiritual development, growing into the vision that we have for ourselves as human beings, how we want to leave this world, what we want to leave behind, the type of people we want to be, the character we want to display, the people we want to help, those deeper, more important things. We're using things just as examples because it's easier for people to process. This daily practice of faith, this is not a denial of circumstances. It's an allegiance to your consciousness. Neville says, live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and continue feeling that it is fulfilled until that which you feel objectifies itself. That's from The Feeling is Secret. There's different ways of putting that. In New Thought, I've heard it this way. Energy flows where attention goes. We've heard that one before, right? We have heard, don't talk about it, be about it. We have heard, fake it until you make it. And there's probably a lot more fun ones. If you have a fun one, go ahead and put it in the chat. There's a lot of good ones. But they all speak to the same thing about being that which you see yourself as, knowing that is who you actually are and not waiting for some far off future. We create the future now by being that which we say we are right now. And so that brings us to feeling. Feeling is that creative medium. Feeling is that secret, is really the secret because feeling is acceptance of who you say you are. Neville says that feeling is the one and only medium through which ideas are conveyed to the subconscious. We can talk about affirmations all day long, but if it is without feeling, we are just saying empty words. We might as well say abracadabra over and over again. Words do not impress the conscious, feelings do. So when we're not feeling our best, the work is not to force positivity. The work is to withdraw from the belief, from that feeling, and allow it to pass without identification. What do I mean? Something not great happens during the course of your day, and you begin to put a lot of weight on it. You begin to analyze it and go through it in your brain over and over again. Instead, withdraw all emotion from it. If it's an issue you need to deal with, make a plan to deal with it, move forward, but withdraw all emotion from it. I'll share a personal story very quickly. I am currently selling my house, and one of the factors was fixing some roof tiles. A very simple thing, but they couldn't find them. And the only place was down in North Carolina, one state over. And the snowstorm was coming in, so FedEx was like, yeah, we're not going to deliver them, and I have to close on this house this week. So I got up early in the morning, yesterday morning, drove to North Carolina, got the tiles, drove them all the way back, left them on my porch. A roofer comes to my door and says, hey, those are the order number of the tiles, but they're still the wrong tiles. So I had a choice here, an emotional choice to make. Was I going to get angry and put a lot of emotion behind this? Him telling me, well, those aren't the right ones and we don't have the right ones and I have to have all this done this week. Instead, I said, you know what? I'm going to go do all the other moving I have to do. You let me know what you find out. So I really just put it out of my mind and kept doing what I was doing. He comes back And he tells me, hey, I happen to have found them in some other guy's truck. They work for the same company. They're the same tiles that I need. And so he went up and he put the tiles up. Now, very simple thing. Once again, not earth shattering, but it had a profound impact on my life because it allowed me to do something. It's a little short segment of my life, but it solved this great problem where I knew not where the answer was coming from, but I did know where the answer was coming from. I knew that spirit would deliver. So I took all emotion from it and just went about my day. And as the gospel artist Tamala Mann says or sings, God provides. Especially in life when we're going through those dark tunnels, sometimes our only option is to keep going until we hit that light that's right in front of us. So we also have to cultivate that winning feeling. Joseph Murphy says the law of life is belief. Whatever you believe about yourself and your life will be mirrored in your experience. So we're going to cultivate that winning feeling every single day. Before the world speaks, we're going to choose our state first. So when we wake up in the morning, now I've been talking about affirmations. I'm not saying they're all bad. I love to listen to them in the morning as soon as I wake up. There's some great ones out on YouTube. They're about 10 minutes long. And as I'm getting up, because I don't get right up. Some people do. They get up, they put their feet on the floor. God bless you. My wife does that. All right. I don't do that. Okay. I'm going to lay in that bed for a good 15 minutes first and contemplate the world. That's just me. But I put on these affirmations and they say all these wonderful things. And sometimes there's a speaker that I like, and I'll put that speaker on. That person will talk about something for about 20, 30 minutes. And by the time as I get up, the first thing I had heard in the morning was something that's uplifting, that's powerful, that is encouraging. And when I get up to start my day, I've already laid the foundation. God has went before me and made the crooked places straight. My attitude is perfect. So no matter whatever comes at me, the armor of faith is already on. And before I go to bed, listening to my own affirmations as I'm falling asleep, or listening to my own story that I created for myself as I'm visualizing the life that I am looking or stepping into. That's what's helping me as well. Sometimes I'll listen to one of our talks from CSL Metro or from one of our sister centers and just listen before I go to bed and learn from that. And when I wake up in the morning and I begin that process again, I have bookend my sleep. So also when I'm sleeping, what is going through my mind? What is my brain processing? What kind of dreams am I having when I bookend my sleep? When I start it and I bookend it with these positive aspects. How is my next day going to be? How am I going to step into the world and present myself? What am I going to be telling my subconscious mind? What is the story I'll be delivering on a regular basis? How will I be feeling? What will I be carrying into life? I'm walking with the armor of faith at that point. And you know those days, we've all had them, and we feel great. We feel strong. We feel powerful. We are spiritually fulfilled. We want to walk in that as much as possible. There is peace before proof, calm before that confirmation, and wholeness before evidence. Faith is not waiting for life to change, but instead, faith is becoming the state from which life must change. We become that thing first, and everything follows it. Signs follow. The word becomes flesh when consciousness is consistently inhabited. So let's bring this all together. Suggestion, faith, and feeling, they are not three separate ideas at all. They are one movement of consciousness. Suggestion is the thought you accept. Faith is the state you live from. Feeling is the seal that impresses it upon your consciousness. Suggestion plants the idea. Faith occupies the idea. Feeling gives the idea life. And this is why it has never been enough to merely repeat affirmations, because words alone do not shape worlds. States do. Our state of consciousness does. What we repeatedly suggest to ourselves, what we are faithfully to inwardly. And what we allow ourselves to feel as real, that is what becomes flesh. Neville Goddard made it really clear when he said, the subconscious accepts as true that which you feel to be true. It is not concerned with the truth or falsity of your belief, but only what is accepted. So this means that manifestation is not delayed because there is a God sitting in the sky, sitting on a throne with a long white beard and flowing robes, delaying your manifestation. It's not blocked because spirit is testing you. It's not slow because you haven't said the right words. It appears when your inner argument is over, when there's congruency, alignment, and consistency. When suggestion becomes assumption, when faith becomes residence, and when feeling becomes natural, then the word is made flesh. Faith then is not waiting for life to change. Faith is becoming the one who no longer needs life to change in order to be whole. I'm going to say that again. Faith is becoming the one who no longer needs life to change in order to be whole. And when that shift occurs, quietly, inwardly, and faithfully, life has no choice but to follow. This is the silent act that shapes worlds. Let us pray. I recognize the one infinite presence, the one life, the one power that is God, expressing as all that is. I know that this presence is the source of every idea, every form, every manifestation. I know that this one lives as me and as each person here. There is no separation between the words spoken inwardly and the life expressed outwardly. I affirm a deep and faithful inhibition of truth, peace, and divine sufficiency. I know that what is accepted inwardly must appear outwardly. The word is even now being made flesh. I give thanks for this law, this truth, this realization, and so it is.